Hi everyone, I'm Reading with Jack and today I'm here with a bookshelf tour for October 2015. I'm actually going to be pre-filming this and uploading it in the first few weeks of university, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I wanted to film a bookshelf tour before I leave, before I move my books around a little bit. I just want to show you how it is now before things change a little bit, and possibly I will actually do a bookshelf tour when I'm at university. I'm going to have a very small bookshelf there, and I probably won't actually be able to take that many books because they won't fit on it, but you know, this is what my main bookshelf looks like now, and then possibly another in the future. I did a bookshelf tour earlier in the year when my bookshelves were in rainbow colours, but I decided to change it back into series because I thought it was a little bit more practical. I was finding a lot of problems with rainbow colours because when I got new books I couldn't really fit them on the shelf in the right colour, and I was really picky. I never thought things looked perfect, whereas I think now things look a lot better, a little bit more organised. I probably won't be able to talk about the books in much detail purely because there are quite a few to get through and I don't want the video to be hours long. But if you want to know more about any of the books that I mentioned, don't hesitate to leave questions down below in the comments. So on this top shelf here I have my Warriors books by Erin Hunter, and whenever I rearrange my bookshelf into series I always give them an entire shelf to themselves because they are obviously some of my favourite books, and they fit the shelf perfectly as well, which is always a bonus. So the first few here are field guides. I'll go through them very quickly. I've got Secrets of the Clans, Battles of the Clans, Code of the Clans and Cats of the Clans. Here I have a few super editions, so I've got Crooked Star's Promise, Blue Star's Prophecy, Sky Clan's Destiny and Fire Star's Quest. On the top I have a few mangas here. I've got the Grey Stripe mangas and The Rise of Scourge. Then we move on to the first books in the main series, Series 1, the original series. Into the Wild, Fire and Ice, Forest of Secrets, Rising Storm, A Dangerous Path and The Darkest Hour. And then if we move along slightly as well, we've got the next series which is called The New Prophecy. In this series I have Midnight, Moonrise, Dawn, Starlight, Twilight and Sunset. And then you can just about see the next one, the third series, which is The Power of Three. I've got The Sight, Dark River, Outcast, Eclipse, Long Shadows and Sunrise. The final few books are from the final series, which is called Omen of the Stars, and you can just about see them there. On the top I actually don't have an Omen of the Stars book. It's the French edition of Into the Wild, which is Retour à l'état sauvage. I bought the French edition a few years ago when I was starting to learn French because I thought it'd be really fun to try and read it. And obviously then, again, as I said, the final series, I've got The Fourth Apprentice, Fading Echoes, Night Whispers, Sign of the Moon, The Forgotten Warrior, The Last Hope, and this is actually not a Warriors book, it's a Seekers book. It's still by Erin Hunter, and that one is called The Quest Begins. Seekers is about bears as opposed to cats. Moving on to this next shelf, which is the second shelf, I have Angel Fall by Susan E. And just to move quickly down here, I've got World After by Susan E. They're the first and second books in the Penryn and the End of Days series. The reason why they're not together is because it didn't fit properly on the bookshelf and I was trying to arrange them. And then here I've got The Hunger Games, which is my favourite YA dystopia trilogy. The Hunger Games, Catching Fire and Mockingjay. I can't wait for Mockingjay Part 2 film to come out in November. And then here I've got Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children trilogy. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Hollow City and Library of Souls. They're all by Ransom Briggs and I love their designs. I love the spines of them in particular. Here I have The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, The Eagle of the Ninth by Rosemary Sutcliffe. I've already said about World After. And here I have The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Afterworlds by Scott Westerfeld, which is a book about books. Then I have Rachel Kane's Ink and Bone, again another book about books. Books about books are going to be a theme throughout this bookshelf tour. I have Cutting for Stone by Abraham Verghese, which is not a book about books. But then I have The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery, which is a book about books, and that's by Gabrielle Zevin. Life of Pi by Jan Martel, The Prince of Mist by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. Then I have my free Carlotta Saney books here, one of my favourite adult writers. I've got 1,000 Splendid Suns and The Kite Runner, they're both in paperback, and then I've got the hardback version of And the Mountains Echoed. This is now one of my favourite areas of my bookshelf. I really like the way it looks with all the classic books in particular. The first few here are not actually classics, but all of the others are. The first few, I've got The Shadow of the Wind, The Angel's Game and The Prisoner of Heaven, all by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, one of my favourite writers, and then I've got Marina by Carlos Ruiz Zafón as well. Then if we look up here, I've got some French plays. These are from the 17th century. Well, the actual physical books are not, but the plays were written in the 17th century, and they're going to be really useful as I go into my modern languages degree. I've got Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme by Molière, Bérénice by Racine, Horace by Corneille, Don Juan by Molière, Britannicus by Racine, which I believe I'm going to be studying this year as part of my Reading French Literature module, Tartuffe by Molière, Sinner by Pierre Corneille, Le Cid by Corneille, Le Misanthrope by Molière, which is my favourite play of his. It's amazing, I love it. Phèdre by Racine, L'Illusion Comique by Corneille, and Andromaque by Racine. Here I have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which is my favourite classic novel, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which I still need to read. I've been procrastinating with that book for ages, and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which is about burning books, so it's quite a shocking read, but a really, really interesting one and definitely very thought-provoking. Then I've got some vintage classics up here. I've got To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories by Angela Carter, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Then some Penguin modern classics, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, which is a prequel to Jane Eyre, a really, really interesting one. And then I've got The Outsider by Albert Camus. Here I have my favourite editions of classics ever. You all know Penguin English Library. My favourite, love the spines, love the cover designs and everything. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, Villette by Charlotte Bronte, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, Hard Times by Charles Dickens, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, which in my opinion is very, very underrated. Not enough people talk about Anne Bronte. Here I have Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and Dickens at Christmas by Charles Dickens, which is a collection of all of his Christmas novellas and short stories. This next shelf is mainly dedicated to YA books, as you can see, some of my favourites that I've decided to put on this shelf. We start at the top. I have The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, Lord Lost by Darren Shan, and then I have all of my Cassandra Clare books here, which look great because the spines are consistent and I love the design. So initially Mortal Instruments books 1 to 5, City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass, City of Fallen Angels, and City of Lost Souls. I still need to get City of Heavenly Fire, but I've not read books 4 or 5 yet, so I may as well read them first. Then I have The Infernal Devices here, which is a trilogy, and in my opinion better than the Mortal Instruments. The characters are better, the plot's more interesting. So I have Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. Then I have some books here by Sarah J. Maas. I've got A Court of Thorns and Roses, The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. I still need to get Queen of Shadows, but I will get it eventually because I really need to read it and see what happens. Here I have some books by Mallory Blackman, who is a really thought-provoking YA author. She deals with the theme of racism in a really unique style. So Noughts and Crosses, Knife Edge, Checkmate, and Double Cross. Moving across a little bit, we've got Gone, Hunger and Lies by Michael Grant, the first 3 books in that series. Wool by Hugh Howey, which is a dystopia. That's actually an adult dystopia, but it's with all my other young adult books. Then at the top here I have some Hunger Games books. I basically collect any Hunger Games edition that I can, so you're going to see quite a few on the shelf. I've got Catching Fire, Mockingjay, and The Hunger Games. For some reason that's in a really weird order. 1, 3, and 2. I guess I need to switch that around after. And I've got the first Hunger Games book again in a different cover. We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and How to Be Bad by E. Lockhart, Lauren Miracle, and Sarah Milnowski. Time Riders, I've got 4 of these books by Alex Scarrow. I've got Time Riders, Day of the Predator, The Doomsday Code, and The Eternal War. And then I have Unwind by Neil Shusterman up here, and then some Patrick Ness books. I've actually only read The Knife of Never Letting Go out of all of his books, but I'd like to read more. I think he has a really interesting perspective on the world. We've got More Than This, which is a standalone book, I believe, and then The Knife of Never Letting Go, The Ask and the Answer, and Monsters of Men, which are part of the Chaos Walking series. Tremor by Ryan Mark, which is a dystopia I read earlier this year, and I thought it was really impressive. The Whale Kingdom Quest by Ming Wei, The Young Elites by Marie Lu, and then Marie Lu's Legend trilogy, which is my second favourite YA dystopia trilogy to the Hunger Games. Legend, Prodigy and Champion. Moving on to this next shelf, at the top I have Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde, and then Under the Nether Sky and Through the Other Night by Veronica Rossi. Insurgent by Veronica Roth, which is the second book in the Divergent trilogy. I'll show you the others later on this shelf. And then I have If I Stay by Gail Forman. At the bottom here I have some books by Derek Landy, part of the Skullduggery series, Skullduggery Pleasant. Playing with Fire, The Faceless Ones, Dark Days, The Mortal Coil and Deathbringer. And then this little book here is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, the first book in the Grisha trilogy. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Maze Runner, Scorched Trials and Death Cure by James Dashner. Uglies, Pretties, Specials and Extras by Scott Westerfeld. Then here I have I Am Number 4 by Pittacus Law. The next few books here are all by Michelle Paver. I've got Wolf Brother, Outcast, Spirit Walker, Soul Eater and Oathbreaker. I think if you go from the bottom upwards, that is the correct order for that series. I think I hopefully did arrange it correctly. Moving over to the other side of the shelf, at the top here I have A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which should probably be with my other Patrick Ness books. I don't actually know why it's on its own, but that's where it is. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, Maximum Ride the Angel Experiment by James Patterson, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief and Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, both by Rick Riordan, and Wolf's Angel by M.D. Lachlan. The 4 books here are all part of the Inheritance cycle by Christopher Paolini, which in my opinion is a really interesting fantasy series that got progressively better with each book. So I've got Eragon, Eldest, Brisinga and Inheritance, which is the final one. And then up here I have For a Divergent collection by Veronica Roth. This is basically just a collection of short stories from the perspective of Tobias Eaton, or For, however you want to refer to him. The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken and The Archived by V. Schwab, Victoria Schwab. Iona by Alison Goodman, Divergent and Allegiant by Veronica Roth. Obviously I showed Insurgent earlier. Divergent's the first book and Allegiant's the third book, which has a very controversial ending, as most of you will know. The Bookshop Book by Jen Campbell, which is a non-fiction book about books that I really do recommend. The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, which is a complete bind-up of all of the books in that series. The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, which is an incredible book about books. And The Power of Six by Pittacus Law. Sorry for this dreadful angle for the final part of the bookshelf tour. This is the shelf nearest to the floor, so it's quite hard to get a proper tripod down, so I've had to balance my camera on some books, and this is how it ended up, but hopefully it'll be okay and you can kind of see stuff. At the top here I have some Harry Potter books, which are all signature editions. The signature editions came out a few years ago and I really liked them, so I decided to buy them all. Obviously Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows, Artemis Fowl by Owen Colfer, then a novel bookstore by Laurence Courset, which is basically this French book about books. It was translated into English and I've got the English version, but initially and originally it was French. Then Where Things Come Back by John Corey Whaley and The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Then if we move across, we'll look here, we've got Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops by Jen Campbell, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss and The Wise Man's Fear. The Name of the Wind is probably my favourite fantasy book ever that I've read, and Quoth is my favourite male character. Then I have Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, the first book in the His Dark Materials trilogy, Winger by Andrew Smith, Running on the Cracks by Julia Donaldson, and then 3 books by David Clement Davies. I've got Fell, Firebringer and The Sight, and then Watership Down by Richard Adams. Moving along a little bit, again with a terrible angle, and it's really dark here. I do apologise and I am so sorry about this, but it's so dark at the bottom of my bookshelf. At the top you can barely see it, but it's this book called Hachiko Waits, which is based on a real life story about this dog who waited for his owner every day after he died. It's really sad and really moving, but a huge recommendation. The film's really good as well. Holes by Louis Satcher, The Air Affair by Jasper Fforde, Changes by J.M. Coulon, The Motives Trilogy by Harry Alder, Eon Rise of the Dragon Eye by Alison Goodman, Michael Morpurgo's War Horse, The Raven Boys by Maggie Steve Arter, then White Devil by John Webster and Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Both of them I studied during my English Literature A-level. Then I have The Forsaken by Lisa M. Stass, and then the final 2 books here are Battle Royale by Koshun Takumi, originally translated from Japanese into English, and I actually have two different translations here. The one at the bottom is the oldest one, and then this other one I think was released last year in 2014, which is an updated translation. At the top here I have 1984 by George Orwell. I have no idea why it's not with my other classics, probably it didn't fit on the bookshelf or something. But then I have Bleach volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, two different bind-up copies there for 3-in-1 editions. Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, which is a huge fantasy book that I am procrastinating with. Some books here by Sophie Mackenzie, The Setup, The Hostage, The Rescue and The Hunted. And then by Robert Muchmore I have The Recruit, Class A and Maximum Security, part of the Cherub series. Give a Dog a Home, How to Make Your Rescue Dog a Happy Dog by Graham Sims. Black Beauty by Anna Sewell, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and Ajax Penumbra 1969 by Robin Sloan. So everyone, that was it for today's bookshelf tour. Hopefully it was interesting, and thank you if you watched through to the very end. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed looking at the books. So until next time everyone, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again in my next video.